Ammar, how's it going?
It's going, man. How about yourself?
Yeah, usual. We've been off air for a little while, but it seems that even when we go away, Red Bull still seems to be a talking point when we come back. Here we are.
Red Bull is always a talking point. It is. It's funny. This is the kind of season, Chess, where the problem with having two McLaren drivers up front is they're just not interesting. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess you can hate watch Lando if you really wanted to, but beyond that, there's nothing with the two drivers. So obviously, it's Red Bull and Ferrari are nowhere, by the way. So there you have it.
Well, I mean that whole Ferrari thread is something to get into at some point, but maybe we'll leave that for another day
Oof.
because I think it is worth tagging a couple of the Red Bull topics today. First one, drivers, maybe driving standards too. Uh, the last time we talked, Max was in the headlines with some questionable driving at the Spanish Grand Prix. We gave our verdicts on that then. I don't think I've particularly changed my mind since then. Have you?
I have not. No, I think it still stands, and we should add because we've gotten a lot of feedback from our viewers that we are being somewhat biased. But I would just invite all of you to kind of see our work before, which has been literally 60% all praising Max most of the time, and he has well deserved it. Therefore, he deserved criticism for what he did, and then he apologized too. So if that's what you want to call an
Right,
apology.
right. So I think actually, just to draw a line under this, there were two articles that came from two different angles that I read in the aftermath. Actually, a few days afterwards. One was from Autosport, um, uh, entitled "Does F1 have a Verstappen problem?" Namely, that they seem happy to either create new rules or let him off lightly for certain things where you think actually another driver might have got away more harshly with those things. I mean, I don't know about the inconsistency side of things, but there's definitely a feeling that there's a massive reluctance to punish Max for things that actually seem pretty hard. And I made a mistake in terms of recalling what happened to Sebastian Vettel, for example, in 2017 in Baku. He got a 10-second stop and go, not just a straight 10-second penalty. So why is it then when Max does something similar in Spain at racing speeds rather than safety car speeds, let's add, he gets a lesser penalty? Or why is it that George Russell gets a drive-through penalty for cutting a chicane, where Max Verstappen gets a 10-second penalty for deliberately, he admitted it, hitting George Russell on track with his car. But from the other side of it, there's also a sense that perhaps Max has also taken on board some of the comments that he got. So maybe if the FIA aren't willing to do anything more about what he's about the gravity of that incident, actually Max has sort of taken it on board a little bit, and after having that very curt interview immediately post race, and saying that, what does it matter, actually in the days afterwards he actually did offer some contrition, didn't he? He did talk about, look, that shouldn't have happened, and it wasn't right in his Instagram post. That, I think, is something that you don't normally see from Max, and that's the point of the article that the race wrote. So there's these two sides of it where, yes, I think there's an issue in terms of the way that Max is policed, and there is a sense that actually we don't really want to be too harsh on him because we don't want him to lose points, because we want him to be a factor in the championship, and we don't want him to be banned because actually we want him to be in the races. But also from a Max point of view, maybe he is also sort of understanding that perhaps the way that he perceives these things, he can't do them with complete impunity, because actually there is a wider world watching, and he recognizes that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so I think with the FIA stuff, I don't think that should come as any surprise to any of us because the FIA have been nothing but inconsistent. And so we can now dive into the motivation for that, which you alluded to. At this point in time, they need Max to be in the mix because that's the only thing that's really keeping the season exciting. And I'd argue that even with his what do you want to call it, style of driving of late, or really from last week, really. And honestly, it was just that one lap, to be honest. So that's it's not really being fair to him. But that's the only thing really standing between um this season having some interest and none. So therefore, the FI are incentivized to not penalize him as much while also penalizing him enough to deter what he did to George. So I'm not surprised that that would be the case, Shez. And I think there was some pointing out to, well, we haven't. This is something that could have been corrected a few years ago by harsher penaltying or maybe consistent penaltying. But I'd argue that the Formula One has needed Max to take down Lewis since 2021 and beyond. That's sort of what they needed coming off of the COVID bump, the Drive to Survive bump. They really needed a competitive season and they got it. And so, yeah, a lot of the complaints sort of go back to 2021. And I can see why that would be the case. I mean, there have been several folks that have pointed out, you included, that Max's driving style is not something I necessarily like. And I think that's a fair point. It really is. You don't have to like or dislike a driver to not have an opinion, but I think that that has been needed, right? Because even if you describe Max as sort of a villainous figure in a particular narrative, you need that. What else is there to watch in sports if not for narrative? So they have needed Max for that. You're going to see this issue, right? Because this is a little bit like parenting itself, right? We all parent our kids differently. We all try to look at the big picture when that happens, and so it's not that different in that regard, I'd argue. So I think Formula One are trying to maintain harmony while also trying to be as fair as they possibly can, and it's going to be an impossible situation. We'll come back on week in week if this incident happens again, which I imagine won't happen again, but if it does happen, we'll come back week in and out and kind of discuss it. But that's the only thing left to discuss. Like I said, you want to really talk about the two McLaren drivers? No one wants to talk about that. We put out several, content pieces. No one's interested. And yet, for whatever reason, Max giving George a bump in turn 5 in Catalonia is all we want to talk about. So what are you going to do?
That is true. What I would say to the FIA is actually a ban doesn't have to completely ruin your season. 1994, remembered for lots of bad reasons, but also there was a fantastic championship fight that season between Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill, made all the more interesting because Michael Schumacher was banned for 2 races, and actually allowed Damon Hill back into the action. And it's not out of the question that Red Bull will suddenly find their way with their car, and perhaps even Yuki will start to fire on all cylinders, and maybe we'll have a bit more of a championship fight. And we'll look back on this and think that actually maybe a 2 race ban or a 1 race ban for Max might be helpful. I jest, really. I don't think it helps the championship, and I absolutely understand what the FIA is saying, but it's so blatant. One thing that I found really interesting was how Red Bull got gaslighted, not only by Max and some of the fandom, but also by the FIA. So in the Stewards report, if you've read it, there was a line in it that said, look, the stewards understand that the driver of car 1 was particularly annoyed at having to give back the position to car number 63. Like, why is that even in the ruling? Like, that's not a mitigating circumstance, is it? That's not something where you go, that makes it okay then. You are angry, so therefore it's okay.
Well, I mean, I love Shez that's been kind of thrown in there. Also not by the FIA, but also in another podcast where you have been on, defended by what I would call Maxeratis, because that's who they are, and they're sort of blaming Red Bull without actually blaming the driver. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, okay, but that it's
Ammar, if I was Red Bull, I would be super annoyed right now. Right, number one, the FIA in their stewards announcement have basically said, okay, happy that he just got a 10-second penalty and not chucked out of the race, so he only got 1 point anyway. But the fact that they said, we're using the fact that he was angry as a mitigating factor, that blows my mind. Like, literally gaslighting Red Bull themselves for making him angry, and second by saying that the incident that he was asked to give the position back for, we weren't going to investigate anyway. Have you ever seen that in a stewards report? Like talking about
No.
an incident that has nothing to do with the incident that you're now investigating, because it's a very simple incident. Max collided with George. Just look at that, make a judgment on that, which they did,
Well,
seeing it as
so
deliberate. So why are they bringing in something else other than to come up with a reason why they don't have to give him a harsher penalty? But that for me is a very, very weak reason, and I can understand from a Red Bull standpoint why they would be very, very angry about that being put in the stewards report.
you know what?
Discuss.
I'm relieved that the FI are being equal opportunity with that, because if you'll remember earlier in the season, the same thing happened with Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton, which still keeps happening for some reason, but whatever. Yeah, Shaz, you're making my point here, which is the FIA and Formula One have all the interest in keeping the season in the balance. I mean, they know that no technical directive is going to stop McLaren. Now, we're done with that, right? And so this is all we want to do. And you're 100% right. They had no reason to comment on anything that happened in turn one, unless they were going to actually, do some real follow-up sort of investigation with it. I believe it was only noted, and then they kind of moved on from it. There was nothing there. So the additional clarification was much not needed. And yet again, Chaz, just because your mom or dad ask you to give the ball back to the kid who it belongs to doesn't mean you throw it at their face. Like that's not how you do it. That's just bad manners, period. Like I think we can all agree as parents, like that's not why you would do it. So the fact that they would do, and but by the way, far be it from me to defend Red Bull, but come on, man. Like I've heard a lot of SH1T thrown out about being sacking Hannah Schmitz and what. By the way, you guys sack Hannah Schmitz. We want her in Ferrari, man. If I'm Fred Vasseur, I'm lining up there like to escort her on a red carpet. Like just the type of craziness that's out there. I cannot remember in the last 5 years a time when Red Bull actually failed in even having a margin call going against them, right? I mean, that's the extent to which they have been hyper successful. And by the way, Shaz, in this race, they had pulled off the most brilliant strategy where Max legitimately had a chance to be P2, maybe not P1, but he at least had a shot at P2. It's not their fault that a safety car came later on. Like that, it happens. That's racing. And yet he was going to. Now, look, you can come back and argue maybe they should have left him out there, because Max and P1, I would argue that would have been tough overtakes for both Oscar and Lando. That could have been fun for racing. But from a strategy standpoint, they did everything they possibly could, and they did the math right. And they didn't have anything but hard tires at the end. That's it. I mean, and so this is what my complaint has been with the people that are defending Max. Like, you're upset because Red Bull put him on the hards, but they had run a brilliant race up until 7 laps remaining. So what is it that you were going to do then? I mean, we would have come on and applauded Red Bull for kind of going that aggressive. So that's no reason to behave the way he behaved. And by the way, it's also funny, Shez. I read the apology on Instagram. I don't read that as an apology, right? I mean, me coming on and saying, "Oh, you and I had an argument the other day," and me coming on and saying that should have never happened is not the same as me saying, "Shez, I'm sorry, I got a little curt with you, or I said something." Like that's not an apology. And when Max didn't mind apologizing to his own team, did he actually pick up the phone and call George Russell? I'm just asking, man. I haven't seen that as an apology. An apology means I'm sorry, I won't do it again. And I didn't read any of that. This just
Nah,
shouldn't have happened is not an
nah,
apology,
I
in
think
my opinion.
okay. I think that aside, for me, that I've never seen Max ever say anything like that
But that
before.
doesn't change it. That doesn't make it an apology.
I think when it comes to Max, that's as good as you're going to get, right? And for me, actually, that is a sign that he is being contrite, and that there is a level of understanding that it wasn't correct. I mean, those were his exact words. The Hannah Schmitz thing, definitely, like, I do not understand. And if you're going to level a criticism at anybody, it's going to be at the FIA, because they've left this little opening where if there's a questionable incident, they're not going to give you any advice about it. They make you make up your mind. And then if you were going to be penalised, but you gave the position back, then great, you don't have to give the position back. But if you weren't going to be penalised, well, you've already given the position back anyway. So you're left in this slightly catch-22 situation where the referee does need to make a decision. And from what I understand, Red Bull did speak to the FIA, and the FIA just said, "Don't know, no comment. We're not gonna give you an answer to that. You need to make your own minds up about it." So they played it safe, which in the moment, as I said in our last video, kind of makes sense when you've got a truncated pack because you're just coming out of a safety car. Then actually, yes, it's more of a risk to take a penalty than it is to not take a penalty. You can understand where that comes from, and it is sensible. But yes, I can also understand why in the car you would be angry about it. Does that excuse the wheel banging? I mean, we keep going back and round in circles about the same thing. No, I don't think it does. That, I think, is the point at which I am going to draw a line.
I mean, you can go up and down the grid, Shez, and there there's a litany of examples of drivers being frustrated because they've been asked to give up a position or something thereabout. No one has ever. I mean, not even Kevin Magnussen did that back when he was racing, although he did do his share of banging around over wheels. But
Miami last year is still imprinted on my memory.
it still is. It's still there. But yeah, so I mean, look, you can't blame. It's racing. It happens. You're gonna get one of these races where, again, Red Bull ran the perfect race that they could to secure P3, arguably go for P2. Circumstances. It just happens. It happens.
Okay, moving on to the next thing. Okay, so where does this leave us though in terms of what might happen? So Max is one penalty point away from a ban, which personally I don't think is going to happen unless he wants it to happen. And there might be a reason why he wants it to happen.
Oh, come on.
Mate, I'm telling you, conspiracy theory 101 here. Let me go and get my tinfoil hat. But if there is a clause in Max Verstappen's contract that says that he has to be within the top four or outside the top four to break a clause that says that he has to stay at Red Bull next year, what's there to say he's not trying to get himself kicked out?
Are you sure? Are you sure it's top four and not top three?
So Autosport.
Are you sure it's not top two? I don't know. I mean,
well, Autosport. As soon as it gets into a publication like Autosport, I tend to go, okay, this is probably fairly legit, and they've said top four, and he is currently 49 points ahead of Charles Leclerc, who sits in fifth. So do the math, man.
Charles Leclerc more races.
Charles needs to win some races now.
He would need to win twice, and Max
needs to get himself banned and like dock himself some points or something.
Even if he does that, it's not guaranteed. Even if he does that, you're assuming Ferrari are going to win. They have shown you nothing close to winning other than a flukish sprint race. Like, I mean, come on. And by the way, that's not a knock on Lewis. It was just McLaren getting it wrong on that day. It has nothing to do with it. But come on.
Okay, but sweeping past which driver might they get if Max does get a ban, Arvind Lindblad, super licensed Supremo. Can we talk very quickly about the rumours that came out this week about George Russell being teamed up by Aston Martin? Like, what the hell?
So your boy is getting a call at Red Bull. He's going to go there.
These guys need to keep that seat open for one MV1, don't they?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if Max leaves, that's a total reset Red Bull are going to have to hit. Because the one thing that's very clear now is, you say what you want, but that car, the Red Bull cars are designed for Max and Max only. I think now there is plenty of evidence to say that every driver that has come alongside him has got their career nuked thanks to the way they're doing this.
But which Class A driver has been in that car up against him?
What do you mean? Which class? I mean, these are all good drivers.
Wait, but none of them are world beaters, though, are they? Like in no world is Sergio Perez a world champion elect.
Yeah, but Yuki Tsunoda is looking worse than Logan Sargent. Like that can't be the delta. Like, I get it. I get that they would struggle in that second seat, but not. And by the way, Alex Albon's
do you think that if you put Charles Leclerc in that car, that he would struggle as badly as Yuki Tsunoda is?
Probably not, but I have no earthly idea what they're doing with the car for Max. Like, that's very true. I mean, look, man, when you and I have argued about this, I've said over and over again, they're making the car in Max's direction, and that's it. And that's it. And that's all they've prioritized. So if Max leaves, I don't think you can sit up here and confidently say, oh, you put Charles in that car, he's gonna be great, or put Lando.
But it might. But if Max leaves, right, then it does at least create a baseline where they go, okay, we can't just keep going down this cul-de-sac of making of setting up the car, or creating an aero map that is further and further forward to make the front more and more twitchy. Because if Max is the only person that can drive that, if he's no longer in the car, well, you can't have the car set up like that because nobody else is going to be able to drive it. So you're going to have to do some more thinking and perhaps readdress your priorities a little bit from from a technical point of view. So I don't think that in the longer term that actually losing Max Verstappen is the worst thing that can happen to the technical department at Red Bull. The problem for them, though, is that they've had such a massive brain drain there. Adrian Newey, Rob Marshall, from a technical point of view, and you're seeing that Jonathan Wheatley is headed off to Sauber. There's so many people that are leaving, and the sort of the stain that's come a little bit from the Christian Horner stuff last year has also meant that apparently people don't want to come and work at Red Bull either. Oh, they're in a tricky position, aren't they? Because Max Verstappen is the only thing they have left. If they lose him, where the heck are they? But ironically, could it work out for them? Could it be better for them in the longer run, technically, to be able to go, okay, if no one else can drive this car, we have to think differently. And perhaps having a driver like George Russell in the car, which is not going to happen if it goes to Aston Martin, might be beneficial for them in the longer run. I don't know. But George to Aston, how does that work? Is it going to be George for Lance? Because I hear that Lance is miraculously going to be back in Canada next weekend. But if that's not the case, is George going to come in instead of Lance? Is Fernando getting the boot? Are they both out? And are we making way for a George versus Max Aston Martin super team?
You know very well that a Max and George team is not happening. Like that is not when they couldn't. They didn't want Carlos to come back, and that is a shame in and of itself. You think they're gonna put George and Max
but
together?
Lawrence Stroll is not as beholden to the Verstappens in the same way that Red Bull are. Red Bull,
but of course he's gonna be.
Why?
Because if he's gonna go snatch Max from Red Bull, then he's gonna listen to it. Who do you think they're placing their eggs behind? In which proverbial basket do you want to put it? Is it in the Verstappen basket or the Russell one? Come on.
Well, I don't know.
What do you mean I don't know, Shez? Shez, how can you say you don't know? How can you say that with a straight face? You don't know. They're gonna want to have Max win first and then see if George.
Okay, but this goes back to that classic argument which everyone keeps making, that a particular team will create a car for a driver.
I did not say that. But when
you're saying let's back Max from the word go without a wheel even turning in anger, then that's what you're implying, that they're going to somehow magic up a car that is just going to be good enough for Max. I just want to stick a pin in that very quickly, and just take a quick tangent. There was a really good article that came out this week from Pat Simmons, who was the technical director at Renault at the time of Crashgate. He's now working at Cadillac, and he writes that from a technical point of view, he wishes that he could create a car that would be specifically tailored to the characteristics of a driver, but that's actually impossible to do. That's a technical director, someone that's still currently working in Formula One, that is saying that you can't do that. You can't magically create a car that is going to be built for a driver. So when you say, oh yeah, they're going to back Max, well, they're only going to be able to back Max if he is able to demonstrate that he is quicker than George Russell in the car that they produce. But if they produce a car in which George Russell is quicker, well, then they have to go down that route, because that's what gets results.
What I'm trying to tell you is that will not happen, because you're talking about what happens once they're in the stable, and then they're sort of deciding who to back, either through technical developments or just on race day with strategy or whatever that is not going to happen, because the Verstappens are not going to allow it. So my premise is Max is not going there if the other driver is going to be George Russell.
Right.
Max is going there. Now, look, the Lance Stroll thing is interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know what to do with that, to be honest, because I just don't know. And evidently, not just me, none of us know what to do with Lance Stroll. Either talking about him being there, not being there, no earthly idea. So I don't know what you do there. Alonso, I don't know. It could be an open game. I mean, I don't really know. I don't see. I mean, we've talked about this before. The Verstappen mantra is much like the Lewis Hamilton mantra in that don't put in another driver that's going to compete with
What
me
are you
head to
talking
head
about?
outside of Nico.
What are you talking about? Lewis Hamilton's gone up against Fernando Alonso,
I'm kidding. I'm
Jenson
kidding.
Button,
Just relax.
Nico
Relax.
Rosberg.
It was a joke.
I'm
Relax.
sorry, but what? If there's ever been a driver that, like, he's literally upped himself out of Mercedes to go and be in a team against Charles Leclerc.
I hope
He
you
had George
guys make
Russell
it.
in the car next to him.
I hope you guys have made it this far to see
Oh my
Shez.
god.
I was just kidding. There was
Travesty. What a
there
load of nonsense.
this is what we have to do an off week. Come on. See, look, they're not going to do that. Like, Verstappen's not going to pair himself up with another driver that has a chance of beating him. That's
Right.
just not going to happen. And that the evidence is played out. No, I'm not worried about technical directives and developing a car and blah 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 blah. None of that. It's just not going to happen. So we can stop talking about that. I think the interesting thing to me in this case is, let's put Max aside for a second, right? Do we think George will stay at Mercedes or go to Aston Martin? I think the Red Bull stuff is a little bit out there. I don't think it. I,
I mean,
I
his
don't know.
his
I
stock
mean,
is high right now, right?
his stock is high, but
And
he
and
would
the, and the,
not go to Red Bull. It would make no sense for him to go after Max has left there. Who, by the way, Shez, will have to go through a reset. I mean, this happens.
there's no
This just happens.
mate. With Max, there's no reset. He literally turned
No, no.
up day
If
one in
Max
that
leaves,
Red
if
Bull,
no, no,
and
if
oh, you're
Max
talking about
leaves, if Max leaves, they're in a reset mode.
oh, you're
That's
talking
what
about
they
Red
are.
Bull being in a reset mode.
Red Bull
They
being in
are
a reset mode.
mate. They are already in a reset mode.
They are, yeah.
They
So
haven't got,
why would you go
other
there if
than
you're
this
George? You have
particular
no reason.
technical cul-de-sac. They don't have another route out of what they are doing at the moment. I am more convinced than ever of that, and which is why I don't see any upsides to Max staying at Red Bull. I just don't see them. And you could argue, well, you know, is the only seat available that's actually worth going to a McLaren seat, and is there one open? Well, I think that if Max suddenly becomes available, I think Zach Brown starts to have some difficult conversations with one of his drivers. Just saying. But in a world that's a bit more realistic, and you're talking about where Max might actually go, I don't think that Red Bull is a viable option for him for 2026 onwards. They don't know what they're doing in a rule set that they were dominating in at the beginning of it, and they don't have good omens for the next rule set. With an aero department that don't seem to know what they're doing in this rule set, and an engine that they are building for themselves from scratch, with no prior
Yeah, I
experience
mean,
of building a power unit.
I
These
think
two things don't add up, man.
I think that's a fair point. I don't think though that you can just go to another team and expect success directly, right? Unless you're going to McLaren, who are showing that they are excelling in the areas you just mentioned, which will be key for next year. So there's that. But again, this is a lot. I mean, I don't. Do McLaren really want that? I mean, if they can, they're going to win a drivers' championship this year, and they're going to win the constructors. Do you really need Max? I'd argue not. You don't really need it. Why upset the apple cart, so to speak, to borrow a
I don't know, man.
Benedetto Vigna?
I say that you get the driver,
Why?
you get the best driver you possibly can at any point.
Why would you do? I know, but they already have a very best driver. If Oscar wins this year, then why would you want to do that? I mean, you're surmising at that point they'll show Lando the door, which again doesn't make sense to me. But sure, okay. Even if we play with that, why would you want to bring Max in when Oscar's your guy? And
I'm
you think
telling
Oscar's
you,
gonna sit there? So
isn't McLaren suddenly becoming a very, very balanced team? This whole,
they
oh,
are.
they're going to have a fight with each other. There's no fight.
Well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. But
How long
even
are we going to
even
wait and see? We're already like
Shez,
a quarter way through the
whatever.
season.
No matter what the fight is, I mean, just look at what Max did in Spain. Like, what do you think that's going to look like when? So, whatever you want to do, I don't think that happens. I would just say this, the whole idea of Max exercising an exit clause is stupid. To me, he doesn't need, if he wants to leave, he's gonna leave. Like there's nothing that can stop him from leaving, clause or no clause.
It's
It
it's
probably
it's
just means
whether or
money
not,
in the end.
yeah, but it's whether or
It's
not
just
Red
money
Bull
in the end.
it's whether or not Red Bull legally will be allowed to will
They're
allow
not, they're
another team to take him on.
I understand that. I understand that, but they're not going to do that. I know that. Yes, you're right. By
They might. They
the legal stuff is there, but they're not. Look, if they want to land
Amar, I
another
think
star driver, they are not going to do
Amar,
that.
I think if any team is going to do that because they are always after a competitive advantage, Red Bull will be that team. They will
Fair enough.
fight tooth and nail to stop Max going to a rival
But the
team.
day but the day thing has changed now. If Christian Horner is replaced, that structure is broken.
Okay,
It's no longer in the place
that
where there it is.
that is a good segue. Let's just to round this all off. If you've stayed with us this far, this is the juicy bit of the episode, and perhaps we'll come back to this in a bit more detail later in the week. But there was a little bit of news that came out of the German media suggesting that the Uvidias, the Thai family that have a controlling stake in Red Bull GmbH, the big Red Bull parent company, have lost a bit of patience with Christian Horner on the back of quite a few mistakes. The technical department isn't firing. The controversy last year has put a lid on people's enthusiasm to come and work at Red Bull, and the driver changes, specifically the Sergio Perez one, which it's been said has been driven by Christian Horner paying him off and then getting in Liam Lawson and then getting rid of Liam Lawson after 2 races to put in Yuki Tsunoda, who's also not done brilliantly. Is this conveyor belt is starting to wear thin, and perhaps poor old Christian Horner's long tenure at Red Bull might be numbered. Who knows? What do you think of that? Do you think that actually it's a possibility that after all this time, Red Bull are losing confidence with the last bastion of the original team that really started this whole thing? And if that happens, is it the right thing to do?
I don't believe in any of these rumors, right? Because I think they're all kind of out there to unsettle stuff. I don't understand why you would lose patience with him now when that is a decision that could have been made, more than a year ago, if that's what you really wanted to do. So, if you invested in keeping him there as the head of the team, why would you lose sleep over that now? Also, we're acting like there's a bench sitting out there of folks that can come in and kind of do it. Like, it's, what are you gonna do after that? Like, okay, you let him go, and then now what? And Christian Horner has been with the team really since its inception, no? So it's not like you can just replace all of that all of a sudden, especially when you had people from under him that have gone in other places. So if you were to say, okay, Jonathan Wheatley's on the team, fair enough. I could see that kind of being a natural progression. That's not there anymore. I mean, they've lost personnel too. So I don't understand how you unspool that unless you're all of a sudden going to. Are we gonna see a Ferrari and a Red Bull swap, not of drivers but of team principals? Is that what we're talking about? Then maybe, but I don't even know if that's so. None of that guarantees any more success. Look, they are where they are, Shez, and Red Bull have been wildly successful for being one of the youngest teams on the grid, right? And even now they are, and they have a formula that works, and they're going to have up years and down years, and obviously they've had a dominant run for the last 4+ years, and they're not having a dominant run now, and they'll figure out a way to retool. I mean, to your point of Red Bull being ultra competitive, wanting to claw and scratch and come back and be in the mix, they'll find a way to be successful. We don't know what that looks like, but these are not people that'll just sit around and say, oh man, whatever, okay, the next time. They're going to figure it out. They're going to figure something out, and it's going to take time. Just like Shez, Mercedes are going through a rough patch. They will figure it out too. I expect these teams to figure things out. And let's also not forget, it's a very ultra competitive season, really. So I don't know
Yeah.
how you can judge Red Bull that way. I don't.
I think two things there. First, I think you hit the nail on the head regarding Christian Horner's position. I think the two things about that are, number one, there isn't a ready alternative, and this is a problem that I think is a problem up and down the grid. Christian Horner was sought out, much like Red Bulls seek out young drivers. They got a guy who had set up his own junior team made it successful off the back of a little bit of family money, and was, without any other support, was managing that himself, making the deals and running it ruthlessly. And they saw that in him, and they promoted him straight into team principal. The youngest ever team principal of a Formula One team at that point. I think he was like 32 or something. He was really young. But there's a dearth of team principal level material up and down the grid. Just look at what's happening at Alpine. They just don't seem to have anyone that can take over. And the second thing about Christian Horner is that actually, when you're losing everybody else in your team, you're losing people from your technical team, from your operations team, from your race team, and the fact that Hannah Schmitz is now getting heat as well. Like, is she going to stick around and want to hear that as well? Like, could she find an opportunity somewhere else? Absolutely, she could. So in that situation, the last thing you want to do is get rid of your team principal, your bedrock, the guy that's backed the team and is nothing but the team for such a long time now, since 2005. So I think, yes, it would be a complete mistake to get rid of him. And that side of things I do think is temporary. But to your second point, there's a pattern that emerges with Formula One teams, and Red Bull bucked that trend only because they had a very one-dimensional reason for why they were off the pace in the turbo hybrid era, which was that they didn't have a power unit. They still had Adrian Newey, and as soon as Adrian Newey started to breathe his magic again, bang, they were back. And by the end of the turbo hybrid era, they were the team to beat. But that, for me, is a very unique situation where a team didn't particularly change in terms of their personnel. They kept everything together. They kept that fire, that passion. All of it was still there. When you look at other teams that have been at the top, been at the pinnacle, and then lose it, they don't get it back. Look how long it's taken for McLaren to get back to where they were in 98, 99, right? It's taken 25 years for that to happen, 30 years almost for that to happen, and a complete rehaul of their entire management for that to happen. They're no longer the same McLaren that they were in 98 and 99. If you look at Williams, since Adrian Newey left in 1997, they've just been on a decline. And Mercedes, same. Although they've kept the same technical staff, and that's why even they are a bit of an anomaly. Yes, they're getting back to roughly being mildly competitive, but they're not back yet. Now, they may completely change that next season, but it's by keeping their core staff. F1 history suggests that when you start to lose staff and your core team go away, just look at Ferrari after 2004, 2005, it doesn't come back, man. Like, you don't get it back until there's a complete rehaul of everything.
This is why these critical decisions are to be made at the most critical times. I mean, again, if you're Red Bull and you chose to stick with the Christian Horner last year when there would have been all the reasons for him to go, you clearly felt that he was going to be the guy to lead the team, not just last year, because they could have won the season last year without him having to be there. I guess you could argue that where he come, maybe. Okay. But Max being Max, right? And they had the car there. So if to your point, if you don't keep the core together, then you have to hit a reset, and then you have to expect
their core is gone already. That's the problem.
But at least you have the leader at the top. That's who I mean. And then,
but what if the leader is the problem, though, Omar?
So I don't know. I mean, look, is he the problem? I mean, we know that
the driver issues. The driver issues certainly had his fingerprints all over them. The Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda. But the fact that Liam was in the car, from what we understand, was because Christian Horner wanted it. In fact, Helmut Marko was actually pretty impressed with Yuki Tsunoda. So that was a direct Christian Horner.
Yeah, I understand. Look, man, but that doesn't mean he's not gonna make mistakes. That's fine. That'll happen.
Pretty big mistake, isn't it?
A pretty big mistake. But I mean, look, they've also delivered 4 straight championships. I mean, come on, like that's no joke. And he's done that not once but twice in his career. So
Well,
I don't think
you
you
can
can
argue
just.
that Max has delivered those 4 titles,
Okay, but
right?
what about the first
And
time?
Max wasn't a Christian Horner hire, was he?
Okay,
Max was in the team because of Helmut Marko. In fact, he
I
said he wasn't
understand
going to
that.
leave because
I
he
understand
was
that,
only
but
going to leave if
success
Helmut Marko left. I mean, so that's
success
not
is.
Christian Horner, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, as the leader of the team, you get the most blame and you get the most criticism. So as you're blaming him for what's going on right now, I'm here to tell you that
But
he's
it's
done
not
four
just
peats
but it's
twice.
not
I
just
mean,
me that's blaming him.
I'm not saying you as in you, but
Adrian
you.
Newey said that he left because of what Christian Horner's reputation was doing to the team.
Okay,
And
and that's
Jonathan
fine.
Wheatley left because there was no progression upwards. So
All of that is fair. All of that is fair, but
so
the
if you're not
window
going to
for
put it
that
on
is gone.
Christian Horner, who are you going to put it on?
I understand. You can put it on him, but my point is it's too late. It's over now. Now you can't do that
So then,
now. Now you got to
okay,
wait.
so then you agree they're not able to come back. They don't have the now
What
they don't
what
have
I'm saying
the
is
raw ingredients to come back anymore. Surely.
what I'm saying is if they want to come back, the quickest path is through the guy leading them right now. That's it, period. They can come back, and as you said, it can take 2 decades, right? But that's going to take 2 decades. So if they want to do that sooner than that, they got to leave the guy in there.
Oh, Amar, we might have to agree to disagree on this because I just think, look, I'm the kind of guy that will normally want to keep the person in as long as possible. Continuity for me is the best thing, but there's been such a lack of continuity, and it all points to one person that I think that actually Christian Horner leaving at this point probably makes the most sense, albeit with the proviso, the caveat, sorry, that I don't know who you replace him with. But anyway, that I think is a conversation for another day. Amar, thank you very much. Guys, what do you think? Christian Horner, stay, go? Who did he replace him with? Where does he go if he leaves Red Bull? Let us know in the comments. We'll read every single one. We'll reply to as many as we possibly can. Please like, please subscribe. We will see you guys in the next one.
Later.